Hello and good morning to you. Welcome back to Anglesey for a second day of racing here at the North Wales Circuit, brought to you by the 750 Motor Club. And we're on the coastal circuit once again today, 1.55 miles in length. My name's Ian Soman. Andy McEwen will be alongside me in the commentary box, and we'll also be hearing from Kieran Mogg roving around Parc Fermé and the pit lane a little bit later on. Confirmation of the layout that we're on today. It brought us some great racing and some great views yesterday, and we're looking forward to much more of the same today. Fantastic action we had, and we've got another 10 races coming up today for you. What's the weather got in store for us? Well, a bit like yesterday, it has started damp. I think it is still just about raining at the moment. That's going to last for another hour or so, we think, but it should then dry up. It's not going to get especially warm. We had quite a strong breeze yesterday. I can hear a bit of a breeze on the camera, on the microphone, but as you can see, the grass isn't blowing quite as vigorously as it did yesterday, so not quite such a strong wind as we had yesterday afternoon. As I say, 10 races that we have for you today. We're going to be getting underway very shortly indeed, but we've got racing from the Nankang Sports 1000 Championship featuring Cup 200, the Tagiwa Type R Trophy. Races for the Mini 7 Racing Club, both the Mini Melias and the Mini 7s, the K-Tech Racing Clio Sport Championship, the Aimshot Mazda 7s, and the Gazshock Swan 16 Trophy with their endurance race this afternoon, the 90-minute race. Andy McEwen, as I say, is alongside me. Andy, we had a great day yesterday, and although different conditions this morning, looking forward to some excellent racing today as well.
Indeed so, yes. We had some really good stuff yesterday, didn't we? We sort of predicted that, I think, at the start of the weekend, looking at the championships on offer this weekend. They usually produce good racing. The Anglesey Coastal Circuit usually produces good racing, and certainly both were true yesterday. But this change of conditions could throw a bit of a spanner in the works, couldn't it, for those championships that raced yesterday? You know, drivers who were on form in the dry, not necessarily going to be the same drivers that we see at the front in the wet. And this circuit in particular, I've spoken to a lot of drivers over the years who say that they either love it in the dry or they love it in the wet. There are very few who seem to be able to wrap their heads around it in both conditions. For some reason, something to do with the surface. There are conspiracies about it being the salt from the sea that makes it a bit more slippery. Who knows? But anyway, it certainly seems to catch people out in the wet, and we could see a bit of an upsetting of the form book today.
I think we could, and it's also going to be drying out, hopefully, as the day goes on. So the conditions are going to be constantly changing from race to race. So that's going to be giving teams and drivers some guessing to do on setup. I don't think it's going to be consistently wet throughout the day. So that's something we need to be mindful of. Of course, the conditions can change so quickly here at Anglesey. The circuit does seem to have a bit of a microclimate as well. So although we've seen a forecast that says rain until 10 or 11 o'clock, it might actually be a little bit different than that in terms of what we actually get here today. Changing conditions means that we're likely to get some extra green flag laps for categories that wouldn't otherwise have them, because the conditions have certainly changed since the likes of the Sports 1000s raced yesterday. The cars I can see for Sports 1000s, they're very shortly, I think, going to be released from the assembly area onto the circuit. All of the BMWs from the final qualifying session of the weekend have now made it safely back into Parc Fermé. Just checking to see if the circuit is clear. I can't see anything that needs collecting. So I think we will now look ahead to the first race of the day, which is for the Nankang Sports 1000 Championship. And as the cars are about to be released onto the track, let's just tell you how the points look after yesterday's race. So Ryan Yarrow now has quite a big lead in the championship. He has 146 points, Carl Austin 106, Paul Rogers 104, Colin Chapman 101 and Charlie Slatton 97. So a big lead for Ryan Yarrow, but very close behind him. And in Cup 200, Mike Whiteman-Hayward has a 5-point lead now in that championship over Dave Watson. The cars coming to the grid with the starting order determined by fastest laps in yesterday's race, I think. And so let's have a look at how they are going to line up on the grid. You can see Ryan Yarrow there on pole position in his number 54 Spire GT3S. He was yesterday's race winner. And besides him is the man who was runner-up yesterday, Richard Webb, in the number 8 car. And in yesterday's race there was a bit of a controversy, if you like, because there was some passing behind the safety car. Richard Webb passed Ryan Yarrow, but the officials looked at that and determined that there was mitigating factors, so there was no a penalty applied to Richard Webb's race result, although I think he did get a couple of points on his licence. Dan Clews did get a 10-second penalty because he didn't give the place back to that he had made up, so he dropped back from I think it was 3rd or 4th back down to 9th position in the final reckoning. Be interesting to see how these drivers have prepared for this race. As I say, it is different conditions to yesterday. There is an option for an Avon wet weather tyre today. I suspect many of the drivers will have made use of that. Green flag waved at the back, so they're shortly going to go off onto a green flag lap. Let's see if we can bring you the grid order though. Confirmation that it is Ryan Yarrow, number 54, on pole position, and besides him it's number 8, Richard Webb. Second row, number 5, Scott Mittell, and 42 is Clint Newman. On the third row of the grid, it's 28, Charlie Slatton, and 43, Paul Rogers, as the green flag lap gets underway. On to row 4 of the grid, and that's where we will find, having received his penalty, Dan Clews, and besides him is Colin Chapman. One of the Cup 200 cars, a bit slow getting away, but it has now done so. Row 5 is 72, Johnny McGill, and 69, Ian Hutchinson. Row 6 is 44, Carl Austin, and 98, John Cutmore, in one of the Cup 200 cars. Row 7 of the grid, 77, Al Bolton, and 9 is Daim Hack. Mike Whiteman Hayward, number 111, is on the inside of row 8, besides 83, Alexandra Aloro. Then it's John Murphy, number 4, and Chris Barker, number 12, on the 9th row of the grid. Vincent Dubois, 88, and Daniel Ashby, number 33, on row 10. 46 at the back of the field is Charlie Wright, and Wright and Ashby were involved in a coming together at the beginning of yesterday's race, so we'll just have to see if either or both of those cars are there at the back of the grid.
Dramas as well there, Ian, for Richard Webb. He too stalled off the line and only got going with about 2 or 3 cars behind him, so because they hadn't all overtaken him, he was able to make his way back up onto the front row of the grid. But yeah, that will be a little bit of a concern, won't it, because it is a standing start for this series, and a couple of them struggling to get off the line, perhaps struggling with the lack of traction, and I wonder if we might end up with somebody not going anywhere when the race starts. I hope that's not the case, certainly for those near the front of the grid for obvious reasons, but 1 or 2 drivers I'm sure will have that on their minds.
I didn't see Daniel Ashby's car out there, but Charlie Wright did look to be there in the number 46 Tim Gray Motorsport prepared Spire GT3. So it looks like we've lost at least 1 car from yesterday. So the car's heading off and really just exploring how much grip there is on this wet and greasy surface. They qualified yesterday in, I think, drying conditions. It had been raining overnight yesterday, as it had done, as it done last night. There are some quite sort of deepish puddles at certain parts of the circuit, and not so much at other parts of the track as well. So drivers just need to understand where those wetter parts of the circuit are, and factor that into their race strategy. So cars coming on to the grid now. It's going to be a 15-minute race. It's the second of 3 races this weekend for the Nankang Sports 1000 Championship. And very shortly we'll have the cars heading out for their first of 2 races. 15 minutes, as I say. So Richard Webb on the left-hand side of the picture. Pole position on the right-hand side of your picture is number 54, Ryan Yarrow. The revs starting to rise then. The red lights go on. They go out and away they go. Oh, it's not a great start by Ryan Yarrow. There's lots of squirming away. It's ultimately Yarrow that does get into the lead, and Webb follows him. Scott Mittell is there in the Mittell, almost getting into the back of Richard Webb's car there through target for the first time. Looks like some of the Cup 200 cars have actually made quite a decent getaway in these conditions. It looks almost side by side for the lead round banking, and Ryan Yarrow spins from the race lead, and he's going to go right to the back of the field here before he can find a space to rejoin. So the championship leader by 40 points coming into this race really does have his work out. Colin Chapman there making a move in the number 63 car. He's got ahead of the number 42 car of Clint Newman. Now, as they're making their way along the backstretch, Dan Clews, I can see he's making up ground. Of course, he started a bit further back down the order for this one. Up towards Rocket they go for the first time, and that's Clint Newman trying to get a place back on Dan Clews. So Spire against Mittell up there, and it's the Mittell on the... No, he loses out in the end to Clint Newman, as they'll now be heading up to the right-hander at Peel before they drop back down through the corkscrew. It's Clews trying to come back there at Clint Newman. But in the lead of the race is Richard Webb from Scott Mittel at the moment. I can tell you as they're coming back down through the corkscrew. There's one of the Cup 200, a couple of the Cup 200 cars there, including the 77 of Al Bolton.
I think that was actually the battle for the class lead, was it not, between Bolton and Cutmore. Bolton going around the outside, which is where the grip normally would be in these conditions, and certainly seemed to be the case, didn't it, because it gained him the position. So across the line they go then. Webb, Mittel, Rogers, Chapman and Newman fifth. Clint Newman, as he did yesterday on the initial start to the race anyway, had a terrible getaway, but he's somehow crossing the line in fifth position and challenging now Colin Chapman for fourth as they head to the banking. He's on the outside line, and again that should prevail really in these slippery conditions. Dan Clues though thinking about making it three abreast, does make it three abreast on corner exit. They go either side of Colin Chapman, and Clint Newman actually may end up losing a spot too. Dan Clues up the inside of him, yes, takes two places for the price of one. A well-read situation that for Dan Clues, and he's up now into fourth place.
Leaders are heading up the hill. They're quite close, but this is quite close as well. The battle between Clint Newman and Dan Clues. They've both got ahead of Colin Chapman, so this is for fourth position. Where did Ryan Yarrow? Got back to 15th at the end of the first lap of the race, and he'll be continuing to charge his way through the order. Watching the 98 car there, which is John Cutmore, second within the Cup 200 class. There's Yarrow. He's fighting his way past, just getting past Mike Whiteman-Haywood, who leads the Cup 200 point standings now coming into this weekend. So Yarrow making another position there. There's Clint Newman in fifth position, I think he is at the moment. There's Paul Rogers. He's third. Then it's Clues fourth. Newman fifth. Chapman sixth. Carl Austin up to seventh place, I think now ahead of Charlie Sladden as well. But these two leaders getting away, Andy.
Yeah, they are, but closing together, aren't they? Because Scott Mittel with a new fastest lap, a 24.6, was 0.8 quicker than the race leader that time. The gap down to only half a second then as they head for the banking. It's side by side behind them for third, as Dan Clues is really rocketing up the order. He's to the outside now of Paul Rogers into the banking, makes the switch back, cuts back to the late apex. Did he get up the inside towards Church Corner? We'll find out momentarily. There are the leading two, still Webb ahead of Mittel in the background, though, I reckon. Yes, that is Dan Clues now up into third position.
Yeah, but the leaders are side by side now, and it's Mittel who's got ahead through the right-hand king, past the school, up towards Rocket they go.
Oh.
Webb's going to try and come back at him, and he's going to go back through to retake the lead, and he does get the car turned in. So very momentarily, Scott Mittel took the lead. Look at the different line he's taking, trying to go all the way around the outside, cutting back to the inside on the exit of the corner. It actually seems to have worked pretty well because he's still quite close to the back of Richard Webb's car. Richard Webb was supposed to be in a Cup 200 car this weekend, but made a late switch into the Spire in the main Sports 1000 category, down into the corkscrew, and Mittel really had a good look up the inside there as well, but that didn't work out. So great battle for the lead here between two drivers with great history in the Sports 1000 category.
I'll tell you what, if these two keep battling, Dan Clues, now he's in clean air, might well be able to close in on them slightly as well. I'll be interested to see what pace Dan has now that he's broken through into that third position. The leaders go through then. They're both in the high 24s. Dan Clues, new fastest lap of the race, a 124.6, so only a couple of tenths quicker than them that time. But remember, that included an overtake. Speaking of an overtake, there's Carl Austin looking up the inside of Colin Chapman. This for sixth position at the first corner, and I think that Carl Austin will go through. So Austin up into sixth position in the number 44 car. But keep an eye on car number 2, Dan Clues. He's quicker than the leaders. He is 5.5 seconds off the lead. But if those lead two keep on battling in, that gap could close.
It could. The leaders are side by side. I can tell you, up towards School Corner, here they are. And again, Scott Mittel's got back through. Now look, he's taken the line, has he, this time? Webb's having to go to the outside, around the outside of him this time into Rocket. Can he make it work? They are wheel to wheel. And no, it's Webb that just has to back out of that there. Scott Mittel took his position and he has kept the lead of the race this time. Fantastic racing between these two. Scott Mittel, the 2015 champion, Richard Webb, the 2022 champion, both of them with Sports 1000 titles to their name, and they are really showing it here. But as you say, Dan Clues and then Ryan Yarrow getting the fastest lap of the race. Don't write Ryan Yarrow off here either, because he is now up to 9th place.
Big slide there from Richard Webb down through the corkscrew. He is giving this everything he's got to try and stay with Scott Mittel. Mittel, though, gets slightly better traction off the final corner and will lead the race by 0.8 of a second then at the end of that, the fourth lap of racing. What pace has Dan Clues got? Not as quick, because actually Scott Mittel just set a fastest lap at 23.9. How on earth did he set a new fastest lap when they were side by side in that fashion through Rocket? That is remarkable, and that does rather suggest that now Mattel's out in front, he may have the pace to pull away.
It was almost stationary, wasn't it, at one point? That's quite remarkable. That, for context, is about 12.5 seconds slower than they were yesterday in the dry conditions. Ryan Yarrow's up to 7th now. Another fastest lap of the race for him, a 1:23.463. He's just under 15 seconds behind the leader. He's obviously yet to have some clear track. He's now past Carl Austin as well for 6th place at Church Corner. His next target is Paul Rogers, himself a champion in the past, but actually Carl Austin now coming back at Ryan Yarrow. So the two Spire drivers fighting it out up the hill. You'd think that Ryan Yarrow, the double champion, championship leader, ought to be able to assert his authority on this. He has done now up at the top of the hill, and he does go to 6th place.
Yeah, it looked like he had that move made, but then he ran wide over the curb on the exit of Church Corner, and of course in these conditions those curbs are like ice, so he had to lift off the throttle, lost himself some momentum, but he's regained that momentum well and truly now as he slips up the inside of Paul Rogers at Peel Corner from a mile back and will make that move. So that's 2 places gained on this lap then for Ryan Yarrow. He's back into the top 5. Scott Mattel, the race leader, is getting away. He's set a new fastest lap, 1:23.1 now, but there's no doubt about it that Ryan Yarrow is every bit as quick as the leaders. What a shame from our perspective that he had that spin at the start, because this could have been an even more entertaining 3-way battle at the front. He may yet get on the podium, but whether or not he can challenge Mattel and Webb, that could maybe be a step too far.
Yeah, it could be. He's got 6 seconds to make up first on Clint Newman, hasn't he? So you could just see the gap between them at this part of the circuit. Basically, Newman coming out of the banking as Ryan Yarrow is going into it. Can tell you in the Cup 200 class, John Cutmore now has the lead in number 98 from number 77 Al Bolton, so that's a reversal of the earlier positions. Meanwhile, look at this, because that is Paul Rogers with Carl Austin right behind him. So Carl Rogers has gained a little bit of Carl Austin has gained a little bit of ground. He was 0.8 of a second quicker than Rogers on the previous lap.
Yep, up the hill he goes then. There is Paul Rogers. And Carl Austin in 7th position, closing in ever so slightly. Up towards Rocket Corner they go. And you can see just how difficult it is to get the car stopped up at the top of the hill, but they managed to do so just about. Then it's Colin Chapman, Charlie Sladden and Jonathan McGill to complete the top 10. The overall race leaders, though, heading out of the final corner, and definitely some more real estate now between Scott Mattel and Richard Webb. What was a 1.6 second cushion has, well, doubled, more than doubled, to 3.3 seconds now. Dan Clues in 3rd position, continuing to put in personal best lap, and he is about 3/4 of a second a lap quicker than Richard Webb. So Dan Clues for 2nd could be on the cards maybe. What pace has Ryan Yarrow got in clean air? A 23.5, so quicker than those ahead, but not by that much.
Yeah, and not as quick as his personal best lap either, so interesting to note that although he's got clear track again, it only takes a mistake, as you say, getting a wheel on the curb to cost you a bit of time in these conditions. So Ryan Yarrow still with 5.3 seconds to make up on Clint Newman, and there's only 6 minutes of this race left to do so. So he's not going to get, I don't think, towards the top 2. He might just about start to trouble Dan Clues before the end, but even that is a relatively tall order at this stage of the race. In the Cup 200 battle, it's closed up. 1.2 seconds between John Cutmore there in the blue car, the white car of Al Bolton, as they're making their way through the banking that time. So we'll see if that battle does indeed continue. So just over 5 minutes left to go in this race. Here a little bit further back, you can see the number 4 car, John Murphy. He's got the 46 car, Charlie Wright, behind him. And they're not too far away from being lapped by the race leader. Here he is, Scott Mattel. Has he done another personal best lap of the race? No, not this time, actually. A slower lap from him, a 1:24 compared to the 1:22.8 that's been his best lap of the race so far.
Still half a second quicker than Richard Webb, though. Dan Clues does a 23.5 and was 1.1 seconds quicker than Webb. So he's got just under 5 minutes to try and bridge a 3.8 second gap, but he is lapping around a second a lap quicker than the driver ahead, so that could be pretty much nip and tuck, as indeed is the fight for 6th position. Carl Austin has now caught Paul Rogers, but where, if anywhere, can he make a pass? Peeks to the inside into target corner, but not able to make the move on this occasion. They exit the quick left-hander, head towards the banked hairpin at turn 2. Two completely different lines taken into the corner, and a big slide there from Paul Rogers. Did well to catch that, but he will lose momentum on corner exit, and Carl Austin sees his opportunity.
Yep, so this is for P6. Austin up the inside, the man from Devon gets ahead of the 2011 champion Paul Rogers from Norfolk. Can he hold on to it? They've both avoided that slippery curb at Church Corner, heading off now up the hill. through that right-hand kink, and then they continue to climb and climb and climb. Then they get on the brakes for the left-hander up at Rocket. There they are, turning their way through the left-hander now, and now heading towards the right-hand element of the corner, and then on to another slow right-hander at Peel. Here is the race leader. That's the number 5 car, Scott Mittel. As you can see, has started to now get into the traffic, and there are a couple of back marks between himself and Richard Webb, who is now 4 seconds behind the leader, the man from RLM. Dan Clues has done another fastest lap of the race, a 1:22.617 now, and he's only 2.7 seconds behind Webb, with probably 3 laps to go.
And he'll be very much enjoying seeing Richard Webb struggling to make his way through the traffic, won't he? That was not the easiest overtake against Charles Wright there that Richard had to make. Meanwhile, the Cup 200 leaders were side by side when they last left my view up at Peel. As they come back into sight out of the window, I can see it's still Cutmore ahead of Al Bolton, but Bolton definitely taking the fight now to the number 98 car. They're about to come down into the final corner, and there are only a couple of cars lengths between them. Further up the field, though, Ryan Yarrow continuing to charge on. Yarrow into the top 5 now.
And there's a car off there. Now, was that Paul Rogers, I think, possibly off at the banking? He's rejoined the circuit now, having lost a little bit of time. He got onto the grass there. There's the Cup 200 lead battle heading into the banking as well. And it's right together now, isn't it? There was about half a second between them at the start of the lap. It's Cutmore still ahead of Al Bolton. Out of the banking they go, down towards the right-hander at Church Corner. They've got one of the Sports 1000 cars behind as well. Different lines being taken by the 2 drivers. Both of these very experienced drivers across a range of different categories. Cutmore primarily in Sports 1000 or RGB as it was. Bolton's gone off and raced in different things like Praga and Radicals and historic cars as well. They're climbing up towards Rocket now. Can Bolton make a move? He's having a look up on the inside of Cutmore to take the lead of the Cup 200 class, and he's done it. He's squeezed through there on the way into Rocket.
Nicely done. He tried that a lap ago. It didn't quite work, but next time by, he managed to make the move stick. So good stuff there from Al Bolton to get into the class lead. We'll have to wait and see whether or not he can keep it. Across the line goes Carl Austin. Of course, he'd just gone past Paul Rogers before Paul had that little half spin, which he nearly did a lap earlier. Got very sideways at the banking a lap ago, and then obviously got a bit more sideways next time by. There he goes across the line down in 9th position now. Jonathan McGill should be the next one through in 10th position, which he is. And then we wait for the Cup 200 leaders, and there the white number 77 car of Alistair Bolton, who has fought his way back into this race, back in the lead now with 2 laps to go.
Yeah. Just over a minute left on the clock. Scott Mittel leading the race by 3.6 seconds now. Webb did a personal best on the last lap, actually. A 1:23.3, took 3/10 out of the race leader, but this... and Bolton almost a bit out of shape there at the banking. He does manage to hold on to the class lead, though. Mike Whiteman-Hayward is not too far behind either in the red number 111 car in 3rd position in that group. Through Church Corner they go. There is our race leader, Scott Mittel. Number 5, he's just heading through Target up towards the banking. Once again, this will now be the last lap. Lap board has been shown. Dan Clues has got another fastest lap of the race, a 1:22.033. He's actually about 0.7 of a second faster than anyone else has been during the course of this race, which is quite impressive, but he's still 2.5 seconds behind Webb.
I do think the track conditions are improving, though, because Webb, Clues and Clint Newman in 4th place all put in personal best laps last time by, and Dan Clues setting all of these fastest laps you would think would be already on the tail of Richard Webb, but Webb is going quicker than he's been so far in the race as well. There, slipping up the inside is Scott Mittel, putting a lap on the number 9 of Nassim Hack, and into Rocket. He makes that move stick cleanly and is now less than half a lap away from the victory. But in these conditions, you've got to keep your wits about you, even in the closing stages, particularly with traffic around, having to go offline to negotiate it. But he's managed it well so far, and should now be on course for the win as 2nd place in Cup 200, and that could still be settled.
It could, because Mike Whiteman-Hayward now is got Cutmore immediately in his sights, the vastly more experienced Cutmore, so we'll see if that's going to change. But Scott Mittel is just coming out now off the final corner up to the line, and Scott Mittel is going to take the checkered flag. There he is to win the 2nd race of 3 this weekend for the Nankang Sports 1000 Championship. Richard Webb goes across the line in 2nd place. Dan Clues takes 3rd position. The top 3 covered by about 4 seconds there. Ryan Yarrow, is he going to be 4th? Yes, he is. So what happened to Clint Newman on the final lap? He's dropped a long way back. I think he must have had a moment on the last lap out of our sight, because he's fallen a long way back. So Ryan Yarrow from the back to 4th. Clint Newman 5th. and it should be Carl Austin in 6th. Yes, it's going to be. Just having a look to see if we can see anywhere on track the Cup 200 battle for 2nd place. I think that's probably up at the top of the circuit right now. Here it is. So it's Bolton ahead of Cutmore, ahead of Mike Whiteman Hayward, about to come down through the corkscrew for the final time in that race. So Bolton looks like he's going to win the class, as he did yesterday. And I don't think we're going to see a flip between 2nd and 3rd. No, it's going to be John Cutmore 2nd, Andy, and Mike Whiteman Hayward 3rd.
Oh, Alistair Bolton with a big slide coming off the final corner. Careful, Alistair. We've seen that bike drivers already this weekend. A real run to the line, actually, between Cutmore and Hayward. Only 2/10 between them in the end at the flag. But really good battling there across the Cup 200 campaigners. Helped a little bit by the fact Al Bolton had a poor start, I think, and had to then fight his way back through. But yeah, that was probably an even more entertaining race than yesterday's was, in all honesty. And in the wet conditions, you wouldn't necessarily have expected that. But Scott Mattel and Richard Webb, brilliant side-by-side battling early on. It was good fun watching Dan Clues and Ryan Yarrow come back through the field. So, yeah, entertaining stuff.
It was indeed, and Scott Mattel making a bit of a one-off appearances, I think, this weekend. Nevertheless, pleased to get a win for the Mattel manufacturer. Ryan Yarrow, not too much damage done with that 4th position. He also have a healthy lead in the championship. A rundown on those results. Scott Mattel, number 5, the 2015 champion, winning in the Mattel MC53 at the end of 11 laps of racing. As Alex Aloro, who just goes across the line now, he was very much delayed. 2nd to number 8, Richard Webb. 3rd to number 2, Dan Clues. 4th was 54, Ryan Yarrow. 5th, 42, Clint Newman. Running out the top 6, 44, Carl Austin. And it was Colin Chapman, Charlie Slazen, Paul Rogers and Jonathan McGill. They completed the top 10. Best of the Cup 200 cars was Alistair Bolton in number 77, 11th place for him, ahead of Ian Hutchinson, John Cutmore and Mike Whiteman Hayward. And I think we then had in 15th place a very late finisher in the form of Alex Aloro. The rest a lap down, Naeem Hack, John Murphy and Charlie Wright. But I think we had all 18 starters make it to the end of the 2nd race of the weekend for the Nankang Tyre Sports 1000 Championship, featuring Cup 200, and they are back out again a little bit later on in the day. But for now, we're going to head down to the Park Ferme area, and for the first time today, we're going to speak to Kieran Mock.
Well, you know what they say, rain is the great equaliser, and it sure was today. And Scott Mattel is on top with the number 5 here. And we'll go and grab Scott over there, which is chatting with his team. But if we can just jump in here once the cars have gone past. Scott, that was absolutely amazing. You had one attempt at it, but the second one stuck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I knew Richard was going to fight it hard, and I thought I had the pace on him anyway. So when he came back down the inside, I was like, you know what, I'm not going to fight this too hard, and I'll just not give him the inside next time. But it was still close the second time. But yeah, once I broke away, I thought I can pull a little bit. It's always hard though when you're in the wet. It's like, how hard do I push now? When I had a bit of a lead, so I was just trying to manage the gap. The guys in the team were doing the board, and so we knew where we were.
Definitely look comfortable in the wet. How does the track evolve when it is the slippery surface? Do you prefer it in the wet or do you prefer it in the dry?
I don't mind wet or dry, to be honest. We obviously didn't have the pace yesterday in the dry, but we changed loads of stuff overnight, so I kind of wanted to find out if it was right in the dry now, but hopefully we'll find out later.
Absolutely. Well, good luck later then.
Cheers, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we'll speak to our class winner, Alistair. Alistair, you had to fight for that one, but it was all good.
Yeah, I think my eyes are still on stalks. It's very difficult to see out there. I had a really good battle with John, and I have Mike behind me as well. And these Cup 200 cars are amazing in the wet. You can race so close. We had a little bit of wheel banging just up the top into Peel, but yeah, fantastic. Just really pleased to get the win.
Absolutely. And you mentioned there just about the visibility. Obviously, the rain has come down quite heavy overnight, and we saw on the camera there's a lot of spray being kicked off the cars. Yeah. How difficult actually is it to spot your reference points?
It's fine until you're following someone else, and all you see is like their red rain light, and you're just kind of guessing where the track is. But there was quite a lot of grip on the outside, so I was trying to go around there, and I think that's where I made up some time and caught up John.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations on the win.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyway, we'll go to a quick ad break, and then coming up next, the Type Rs. See you in a second.
So the cars lining up on the grid for the second of 3 races this weekend for the Tagiwa Type R Trophy, and it's a partially reversed grid from the result of yesterday. The top 10 out of only 13 finishers have been reversed, and so we have a very interesting lineup on the front of the grid. Let's have a run through it for you now. Pole position, I can tell you, is the number 92 car. That is Adam Parker, the teenager. Beside him is number 374, which is Kai Lindsay, I should say. It's Richard Lindsay, number 74, on the inside of the second row of the grid, besides number 61, James Delisle. 95, Ben Seabold, lines up on the inside of row 3, besides number 19, Ollie Musgrave. Onto the fourth row of the grid, that's Joseph McMullen in number 11 and Joe Jessup 28. Don DeGraff in 15, and yesterday's race winner, Matt Wilkins, number 86, on the fifth row of the grid. Then on row 6, it is number 94, Ursula Jordan, 26, Lee Rickard. On row 7, it's number 7, that's Andrew Idwin, and 13, Tom McFarlane, who was constantly spectacular yesterday. Row 8 of the grid, 77, Luke Emmons, and 66, Ross Borman. Row 9, 42, Trafford King, and 93, Joe Dalgano. And then rounding out the field, 18, Matthew Duffel, and 12, Richard Jones. And that is the way that this 20-car grid is going to line up. Yesterday then, it was Matt Wilkins that took the win in what was just a 4-lap race after a red flag and a restart from Don DeGraff. It was last year's champion Joe Jessup in third, but there was quite a high rate of attrition, 7 non-finishers. The point situation now coming into this morning's first of 2 races today for these cars. Matt Wilkins has a 29-point lead on 173 points to Joe Jessup's 144. Don DeGraff has moved up into third place ahead of Ollie Musgrove with Joe McMullen in fifth. But yes, yesterday's race, Andy, was a little combative, wasn't it, at times?
Bruising, wasn't it? I think 1 or 2 of them were left licking their wounds after yesterday's race, but you know, it's the nature of a closely matched field like this, I suppose, and a lot of the dramas seem to centre around the braking zone into Rocket, which is always a bit of a trouble hotspot here at Anglesey because it's such a high-speed run uphill, a steeply uphill braking zone as well, which sort of goads you into braking a little bit later maybe than you should, and yeah, perhaps not too surprising that we had a few clashes up there, but the rest of the race was really very entertaining, wasn't it? Matt Wilkins and Don DeGraff very evenly matched at the front of the field, but now they've got work to do. They've got to try and overtake some of the drivers that they beat yesterday, and in these conditions that becomes even more tricky because in the wet there is usually one definitive quick line as the drivers, as you can see, are beginning a second green flag lap because of the change of conditions from yesterday. But yes, because there is one definitive quick line around the circuit, it can make overtaking a little bit tricky. So yeah, those who were at the front yesterday should be able to march back towards the front again in this one, but they'll have to be careful. That's right.
Adam Parker, though, the driver on pole position in the number 92 car. Just some information about Adam. Unfortunately, at Coombe, which was the previous meeting for this championship, they lost the engine there. A con rod went through the front of the engine and sort of made a bit of a mess, as it would. And they've had a new engine now. It's a big push and a big stretch for the team to get that ready. But they've done that now. It's the first outing since the new engine. And they were keen to get another top 10. Well, they achieved that yesterday, which was great. Now they've got a pole position. In spite of this new engine, which is still being broken in, really. And good luck to Adam, who started his racing in the junior saloons a while back, and he's got some support now from the Sarah Horn Academy as well, a wellbeing organisation. So that's Adam, who's going to start on pole position. The drivers we've got to watch, though, are those that finished at the back end or started at the back end of the top 10 because they finished in the first few positions yesterday, including Matt Wilkins, the championship leader. He's had a pretty strong season so far. He's had 3 wins now this year. Joe Jessup has had a couple. Wilkins has won each of the 3 venues we've been at so far this season. Got the onboard camera there on Ross Borman, number 66. Now, he was one of the drivers that failed to finish yesterday's race, so good to see Ross back out there.
Yes, indeed so. I think his was a breakdown, wasn't it, rather than an incident as such. So, yeah, hopefully they've got that one sorted. He'll be very grateful, I'm sure, for the 2 green flag laps because it gives him a bit of extra time just to shake down the car, make sure everything's working as it should do ahead of the 15-minute race to come. The leaders, or the front runners, I should say, lining themselves up on the grid, though. And for Adam Parker, the nerves must now be starting to rise just a little bit as he pulls into pole position, but he will know that if he makes a good start and just gets his head down, he might have a bit of a chance of breaking away. Certainly the cars around him on the grid, he was as quick as yesterday. And it would mean an awful lot to him and the team, I'm sure, after their issues earlier on in the season, if he could bring this one home on the podium.
And the other on-board camera we've got here is number 94, which is Ursula Jordan. She's going to go from row 6 of the grid, the 30-year-old from Warwickshire. And a new car for this season, a real family effort to put that car together. It's the sort of two-tone blue car, which you'll see during the course of this race. You can just see her on the right-hand side of shot, the sort of third car back on the far right of the shot for those of you watching on this Alpha live stream. Wipers on the vast majority of the cars here, so clearly some rain still in the air, and I'm just doing a quick tot up. We've got 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, so we've lost 2 cars from yesterday. Raid lights go out though, the race gets underway. It's a pretty good start by Adam Parker, good start too by James Delisle in the number 61 car from the second row of the grid. He's got through into second place. Carl Lindsay has dropped back to 4th or possibly even 5th position because the 95 car of Ben Siebold might just sneak that place away from him as they head into the banking for the first time. There's one of them a bit sideways though, that's Delisle. He's going to lose a position. I think that's Kai Lindsay going back through actually. Might well have picked up second place. Oh, and now there's some contact in the middle of the field.
That's De Graaf.
De Graaf's involved. He's spinning around. How did he get that far forward in the first place is one of the questions. It looks like everyone is going to get pointing back in the right direction and continue, but a real schmozzle there in the midfield. And that spread the pack a little bit, Andy, as they climb up towards the score corner. And now there's another car spinning. That's Ursula Jordan who's spinning around. She's off on the grass as well. There you can see her. And there's another car also involved as well. Yeah, Jordan is frustrated, I think we can read into that. She's pointing at somebody. That's the number 19 car, Ollie Musgrave, that was the other car involved in all of that. So these wet conditions, Andy McEwen, certainly catching drivers out on the first lap. There's a big dent on Luke Evans' door as well.
Yes, I'm not sure from which incident that one came, but yeah, messy stuff. But we sometimes see this with reverse grid races, don't we? Edmonds now under threat here as they head through Peel Corner, loses a spot to Delisle, who, as you said, had that moment at the banking and is now starting to pick their way back up through the order. The leading group, though, exiting the final corner, very, very tightly bunched. It is still Adam Parker who leads, Lindsay in second position. Third place then for the number 95, that's Ben Siebold, who started 5th on the grid. There you can see him on the tail of Lindsay, and Matt Wilkins up into 4th position from 10th on the grid. Now, you asked how Don de Graaf got so far up the order. He had by far the best of the starts. He had gained about 3 places before he even got to turn 1. That sadly got him in trouble on the exit of turn number 2, whereas Wilkins had picked his way through it nicely.
I'm not sure he is in 4th. Looking at the positions on the track, we'll try and get a look at that. He's 4th on the timing screens, but we'll just try and work this out as they come through.
Yes.
The 2 leaders are heading through Church Corner nose to tail, and it is Kai Lindsay in the 374 car pushing Adam Parker hard. 5th, we reckon, for Matt Wilkins, actually. So there must be someone with a transponder issue or something like that. But up the hill they go towards Rocket. And Kai Lindsay having a look up the inside of Adam Parker into Rocket Corner. And Parker goes a bit wide, but he'll have the inside line for the next element of the corner. And he holds on for the lead. It's Joe Jessup that's there now in 3rd position as well. So he's already won a couple of races this season. He was the champion last year, so he's very much one to watch. He'll be challenging these 2, but he's actually the one with no working transponder. That's rather confusing us. It's Ben Siebold 4th and Matt Wilkins in 5th position. So the 2 main championship contenders, Jessup and Wilkins, in 3rd and 5th, respectively. And the rain is hard, and Kai Lindsay is spinning. And is he going to take someone out? He's into the side of Joe Jessup. Ben Siebold dodges around the outside of him. Jessup only got narrowly tagged there. He is still there, and he's now running in 2nd position behind Adam Parker.
Well, yeah, that rain definitely catching people out. It is raining a lot more intensely now than it has at any point so far today. More side-by-side further back, and out onto the grass goes Borman. That was Don de Graaf fighting his way through on the inside line. So Don de Graaf with a bit of damage to the left front corner, but actually not too bad given the size of the contact that he had on that opening lap. Where is Don de Graaf? He is 8th at the end of that second lap of racing, so could still be on for a decent result here if he can stay out of trouble. But these conditions are becoming ever more treacherous now, and that limited amount of standing water that we were talking about at the start of the day is definitely increasing now as we move through this race. Joe Delgado there up the inside of Borman now into Church Corner, but the leaders, Ian, are right together.
Yeah, and it's Joe Jessup this time on the right-hand side of the circuit of Adam Parker, who's just about held on to the lead all the way through this race so far. Jessup trying to go around the outside of him, but that's not worked out for him. There's Ben Siebold just behind in third place as well. Matt Wilkins, yesterday's winner, right with them as well in fourth position. Looks like Jessup has actually lost a couple of lengths on Parker through the Rocket Complex, who's driving really well here, Adam Parker, to keep these drivers at bay. First four certainly have broken a bit of a gap to the rest. It's Richard Lindsay in fifth, I think, as we watch them come down through the corkscrew. They all get safely through here. There's quite a big puddle halfway down the corkscrew, which can catch drivers out, but certainly the drivers we're seeing here going through all navigating it safely. There's Joe McMullen. Oh, big moment though for Adam Parker on the exit of the corner. Does that give Jessup an opportunity up into target at the start of lap number 4? Has a look up the inside. He's not made it work yet though.
No, the grip is on the outside, isn't it? Parker keeps his foot in it, holds on. Ben Siebold in third has the fastest lap as Jessup now launches to the inside into the banking, goes for the race lead. Will he have the traction on corner exit? Yes, just about. And Jessup then goes to the front of the field, and that was an important move because Ben Siebold and Matt Wilkins were starting to close in on him from behind. So Jessup, the first of the, if you like, fancied front runners to make it to the front of the pack, but he's wide up the curb, look, coming out of Church Corner, flirting with disaster doing that in these conditions. Not quite as much as Richard Lindsay, though, who is completely off the road behind them.
Matt Wilkins is making good progress. Look, here he is alongside Ben Siebold now. Oh, and there's contact, and Siebold spins around. That delays Wilkins. Siebold off onto the grass. He got the fastest lap of the race on the previous lap, and now he's on the grass up there on the approach to Rocket. Now that's going to be slippery and slidey to try and get out of. He's still stationary at the moment up at the top of the hill. So that's Siebold off the circuit. Wilkins delayed by that, but I think still holds what is now third place.
Yes, although I suspect that will be looked at after the race. That was not a good place to be making contact. Fastest part of the circuit. Thankfully, no more major damage done, and Siebold has now managed to get going again. So the yellow flags will be in by the time the leaders get there next time. So, what's the situation now? Well, it's Joe Jessup leading the way. It's still Adam Parker in second place. If he keeps out of trouble here, could still be on for a podium finish. Then Wilkins in third. A big gap back then to Delgado, who I think is... no, that's not Delgado. That is McMullen, sorry, who's up into fourth position. Fifth place then for Lindsay. Then Lee Rickard and Don de Graaf. So Don de Graaf is seventh place, 9.6 seconds off the race lead. But on the tail, essentially, of the battle for fourth, as Adam Parker throws away second place at the banking, runs up the hill, and through, at least temporarily, will go Matt Wilkins.
Yeah, he's going to try and fight back though, but I think Wilkins is probably going to make this position his own. So you've got the two most fancied front runners in the championship now in first and second positions. Parker having dropped down to third place. It's seemingly unable to resist the pressure from the more fancied runners. He's got quite a bit of a gap though back to the car in fourth place, which is number 11, Joe McMullen. Richard Lindsay, 74, is fifth, and Don de Graaf now is up to sixth. He's got ahead of Lee Rickard on this lap already. There, as though, is Adam Parker, number 92, the 17-year-old, up at Rocket Corner, just tucked in behind the two leaders.
A bit wide behind them for Joseph McMullen, but he had about a second in hand over Richard Lindsay, so should be able to get away with that, hanging on to fourth position. So now the question is whether or not Matt Wilkins can catch Joe Jessup. At the start of the lap, he was 2 seconds behind Jessup, but of course hadn't overtaken Parker yet. Now he's into second place, though. I don't think that's 2 seconds anymore, is it? Out wide goes Joe Jessup into the entry to the corkscrew, where everyone just seems a bit tentative, a bit reluctant to turn in too aggressively after some of the moments we had there earlier on, and that gap is visibly down to maybe only about a second or so. Let's see what the timing screen says. It is well, Jessup's time transponder isn't working. We'll get there in a minute. Lindsay, meanwhile, up the inside of McFarlane, who so far has stayed out of trouble in this race, but is still engaging in a pretty entertaining battle here outside the top 10.
Yeah, Kyle Lindsay, of course, was battling for the lead at one point, but now well down the order in 15th. Position, maybe about 14th now, actually, ahead of Andrew Edwin. But we've got 6 3/4 minutes of the race left to go, and McFarlane, who was spectacular yesterday, living up to that today. Kyle Lindsay trying to go around the outside of him. His car's looking a little bit battered and bruised from scars in this race, and now he throws it away at target. He does manage to keep it putting in more or less the right direction. So McFarlane's going to go back through to 13th position.
Oh, so easy, isn't it, to get that bit of lift-off oversteer in these conditions. And luckily, you can just plant your right foot down and power your way out of it. But obviously, that creates a bit of a scare for the cars behind. Now, this for the race lead. Joe Jessup has run wide at Rocket. And Matt Wilkins has a bit of an overlap. Doesn't have the traction on the inside line, though, exiting Rocket. And so Jessup hangs on. But can he defend for another 6 minutes? It seems rather unlikely, really, at the moment, doesn't it? because he's under all sorts of pressure from Matt Milkins behind as they come out of Peel Corner and head down the hill. Milkins then having caught Joe Jessup. Where can he make his move? Look, he's exploring, trying to find some grip, trying to go where Jessup isn't going to try and find an advantage, as Adam Parker once again has a big slide in third place.
Yeah, 5 3/4 minutes to go. Leaders just coming across the line again to complete lap number 6. Matt Wilkins was the fastest man on the circuit on the previous lap, and he, I think, still is, although they were both a bit slower that time around. And he now is getting it very sideways indeed as he's trying to challenge Joe Jessup. 3/4 of a second was the gap between them at the start of this lap. Parker third, McMullen fourth, Lindsay fifth, De Graaf in sixth, but only about 8/10 behind Richard Lindsay now, so he could improve another position. The driver that's third in the championship coming into this race, I should say, moved up a position yesterday. He's yet, though, I think, to go past the car that is in... no, he has gone past the car and up into 5th position, I beg your pardon. There, though, is Joe Jessup in the lead of the race, and that gap has increased since the start of the lap. It was 3/4 of a second. It now looks like considerably more than that, so possibly Matt Wilkins has made a bit of a mistake. There's another one. And, yeah, he has got into Rocket far too deep there now, turning his way. And if he's not careful, he's going to put himself back into the clutches of Adam Parker. He's perhaps just overdriving a little bit now.
Well, a lap ago, I would have put my money on Wilkins to win this race. He looked definitely the quicker of the two, but you're right, a couple of mistakes creeping in over this lap, and suddenly Joe Jessup could be off the hook. What's that gap that he's got? It's probably back over 2 seconds now as they drop down into the corkscrew, but Wilkins has caught him once. There's no reason why he won't be able to catch him again. Just needs to maybe stop over driving ever so slightly. Got a slow car on the back straight though, Ian.
Yeah, is that James Delisle?
It is, yeah.
Slowly, yeah. He's the one that's dropped right at the back of the field. He's just pulling off onto the access road to chat to the rescue unit drivers there, I think, who are stationed at that particular part of the circuit. Joe Jessup now in the lead of the race has done the best lap, a 1:31.6. For context, that's 11 seconds off yesterday's fastest lap set by Matt Wilkins. There's Don De Graaf, and he's actually still in, he's still in 6th place, isn't he? So he's not yet got past Richard Lindsay. 8/10 of a second, still the gap. He's ahead of Lee Rickard in the 26 car, but not yet ahead of Richard Lindsay in the number 74 car. And he's only got probably 3 more laps to try and make another place here.
Indeed so. It was a slow lap for Wilkins. Yes, it was a fastest lap for Jessup, but it was sort of paired with a slow lap for Wilkins. So I think that's why that gap has now extended to 2.5 seconds. There you can see them splashing their way into Rocket. You can see how Wilkins got it wrong there a lap ago. There's a lot of standing water. McFarlane's off again. Not the first time we've said that today. And spins right in front of another car. That was, who was that? Was that Idwin, I think, that narrowly avoided T-boning Tom McFarlane. And that was a very, very lucky escape with a huge tank slapper coming out of turn 1. Miraculously, I think there was no contact and both cars able to continue.
These conditions aren't improving, are they? No. It is absolutely chucking it down here at Anglesey at the moment. It is forecast to stop raining at some point in the not too distant future, but I don't think it's going to affect the end of this race. Now, there's Adam Parker, number 92, still in 3rd position, looking for a podium here, which he'd be absolutely delighted by, I'm sure, with that new engine. Matt Wilkins briefly showing in the lead there, but that's because of the transponder issue for Joe Jessup. The gap has come down, though. Wilkins doing the best lap of the race, just a high 1:30 now, so just breaking into the 90-second mark. He's pulled further clear of Adam Parker as well, who in turn is about 6 seconds clear of Richard Lindsay. So 2 minutes of the race left to go. There is Parker, and there's Lindsay now with Don De Graaf behind him. Up into the banking, and there was the contact there. Lindsay certainly got sideways. De Graaf backed out of it and is still behind Richard Lindsay for 4th place. So it's Joe McMullen, I think, that's dropped back behind both of them, isn't it? He was in 4th place. He's now dropped back to 6th, but here's the race leader.
Well, I mean, what impressive pace that was from Matt Wilkins to set a new fastest lap as the conditions deteriorate, but he's on the curb going into Rocket and just about keeps the car on the road. I know sometimes full wet conditions can be quicker than sort of damp and greasy conditions, but this now looks very treacherous indeed, doesn't it? Wilkins and Jessup both spurring each other on. Don De Graaf, meanwhile, back up the inside of Richard Lindsay. This time cleanly gets the place away as they head through Rocket Corner. So that's 4th place now for De Graaf. Lindsay tries to get back up the inside, gives him a bit of a headbutt, maybe a bit of payback after that contact that they had up at the banking, but no harm done. Don De Graaf goes through. into 4th position. We're about to start, disappointingly really, the final lap of the race though, Ian. Do we think that Joe Jessop's got this in hand? Quite possibly. As he crosses the line, there's also been a spin for there. That is Iduin off again, isn't it? Andrew Iduin, that's on the exit of Church Corner.
Gap almost exactly the same as it was on the previous lap between the two leaders, just about 1.8 seconds. Wilkins crept narrowly closer as Andrew Iduin recovers here. These are the two leaders out of the banking. 1.8 seconds sounds like a decent margin, but in these conditions, a mistake can be so costly. Jessop then holding on, looking to sort of match Wilkins' win tally for the year. This will make it 3 apiece if Joe Jessop can hold it on. He's going through Church Corner for the final time. They're both safely through there, about to head past the school building up towards the left-hander at Rocket for the final time in this race. Just now got to eliminate mistakes, Joe Jessop, and he'll win this race. There's Wilkins.
Jessop's gone wide though,
He has, yes, just out of shot. Jessop had gone wide. Wilkins now right on his tail.
Yes, he is. Nose to tail then out of Rocket Corner. So was that a costly mistake for Jessop, or will he be able to keep hold of the lead into Peel Corner? They go. Wilkins will be definitely incentivised to try and get this place. He knows that this could be significant for the championship come the end of the season, but he's running out of opportunities. Down towards the corkscrew for the final time. Wilkins going to the outside line. Can he carry the speed round the outside? They splash their way down the hill. Look at the state of the track. It is absolutely flooded as they come down through the corkscrew. Sideways for Jessop. He's leading into the last corner. Ian, can he hang on?
Well, it could be a run to the line. It's not a very long run here, though. They both splash through the puddles. Over the curbs they go, and then nose to tail over the line. Joe Jessop taking the win. The gap, 0.2 of a second between them in the end. A fantastic final lap of the race. A mistake from Joe Jessop at Rocket, but nevertheless he managed to hold on. Look how wet this circuit is now. Adam Parker, a fine result for him. He comes home in 3rd place. Don de Graaf, after spinning most of the way down the pack, takes 4th. Richard Lindsay 5th. Joe McMullen 6th. Lee Rickard is 7th. Trafford King, we didn't really mention him too much, but he had to come through from the back of the grid. Oh, and look at that, Luke Emmons. He's had a big accident right at the end of the race. He's gone nose on into the barriers, and that is an odd place to go off. That's at the corkscrew.
But we've seen so many people getting it wrong there in this race, because these cars are prone to that oversteer as you turn in, but that almost looks like he's just gone straight on. It's very early in the corner that he's gone off, and that is a fairly big hit. So the marshal's running over to check that he's okay, but for those that did manage to keep it on the island at the end, particularly whilst battling so hard, Joe Jessop and Matt Wilkins, that's one of the best displays of driving that I've seen in a long time, in atrocious conditions. Not only did they keep it on the track, but they kept on fighting to the flag, and there was only 0.2 between them at the line. Brilliant.
No, great racing in really horrible conditions, and one or two drivers unfortunately have fallen victim to those. I think last few cars still coming over the line. That's going to be Tom McFarlane getting ahead of Andrew Idwin after Andrew Idwin's late spin. So they're 14th and 15th. Those are going to be the final finishers. Ross Borman, he's on his slowing down lap. I'm not sure he can see very much out of that car, but a combination of the windows steaming up and the spray and the sort of light. I mean, it is quite bright out there. It seems strange to say. There is a definite sort of lightness in the air, which makes it a little bit more difficult to see. Let's have a look at the results of that race, though. 10 laps were completed by Joe Jessop in those extremely difficult conditions in just over 15.5 minutes, and he finished 0.231 seconds clear of Matt Wilkins in 2nd place. 3rd place to number 92, Adam Parker. 4th to number 15, Don de Graaf. In 5th place was number 74, Richard Lindsay. 6th was number 11, Joe McMullen. Then it was Lee Rickard in 7th, Trafford King in 8th, Joe Dalgarno in 9th, Ross Borman rounding out the top 10. Then Ollie Musgrave, Ben Seabold, Kyle Lindsay and Tom McFarlane. Just one other finisher. That was in 15th place, Andrew Idwin, with Luke Evans, unfortunately there into the barriers on the final lap of the race. And James Delisle rounding out the field in those that started the race in a non-finisher, but actually there's one more, wasn't there? Should have Jordan in 18th place. So those were the Type R Trophy cars. They're back out again a little bit later on this afternoon, and we're going to head down now to Parc Fermé. Kieran Mogg, rather him than me in these conditions. He's out there in the rain.
Well, I hope you guys are enjoying a nice, warm and, more importantly, dry commentary box, because out here it is absolutely torrential. But we're going to speak to our race winner, Joe. That was, get onto here for you. That was absolutely mental out there.
Oh, it's crazy. It was crazy. So it was sort of all right at the beginning, and then the rain started to come down, kept losing it up to the sort of last corner up the hill. I could see Matt catching me up there big time, and then I sort of just tried to stay on the track and just keep the gap and come home for the win.
It looked like a lot of drivers had a lot of trouble staying on the track. Is it difficult to keep it on the black stuff in this car?
Yeah, I mean it is. It is. So it sort of aquaplanes down the straights and things like that. So you've just got to be careful with it. But no, the boys at DH Racing and Danny, they've been working on it so hard this weekend. So it's great to bring back a win for them.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations and good luck later.
Cheers.
Thank you very much. We'll speak to our second place, Matt Wilkins. Matt, you were really pushing there. Nobody can take that from you at all.
Yeah, it was a tricky race, real tricky conditions. Got worse through the race, but I'm happy with that from 10th.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing that I noticed as well is that a lot of drivers are taking all sorts of different lines. In the wet, the outside line tends to be at the sort of advised line, but a lot of drivers are also taking the inside line. Did you find that one sort of worked over the other?
I found the racing line still had a bit of grip, but it's just locking up into the corners has happened a lot. You know, it was pretty tricky. Tricky conditions. Quite a lot of damage again, unfortunately, but it's the weather conditions.
Do you think you could possibly take the fight for the win later?
Yeah, should be good starting P2, so all good.
Look forward to seeing it then.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you very much. And we'll speak to our third place man, Adam Parker. Adam, you had to fight for that one. Obviously, a bit of a battle with Matt as well. How was it out there?
Very wet, but it was fun. You'd be sideways on most corners, but holding it and keeping it there was the funnest part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, the rain started to really heavily come down as well.
Yeah.
Was it getting gradually more and more difficult to keep it on the track?
Yeah, so even on the straight, you'd be holding it sideways, trying to get the acceleration down, and you'd be two gears higher than normal to even get the acceleration down what we were spinning. So yeah, it was a lot harder than normal.
Well, absolutely. Well, how are you looking forward to the race later? Do you think you can possibly take the fight to the top two?
I'd like to, but we'll see. We'll find out, I guess.
Look forward to seeing it then.
Yep, no problem, thanks.
Thank you very much. Anyway, we've got the minis coming up next. The rain has momentarily sort of subsided, but we're going to a quick ad break, and then minis coming up next. Don't go anywhere. Well, that was certainly an exciting race, wasn't it? I mean, we can just see the 61 Civic being brought in, and no matter whether on the road or the racetrack, they always cause chaos. And unfortunately, that wasn't the only incident that's just happened. My brolly has just decided to crap itself. There's a metal bar here, which is just not exactly in a straight line, but never mind. It has sort of subsided, but yeah, anyway. But we're in the assembly area now, and if we look here, there is just this massive puddle. This drain is working overtime to try and get the water out of this area, and also a little bit of oil. I'd imagine that's probably come from the BMWs. Anyway, we'll try and chat to some drivers, and we'll speak to Mr. Jordan over here. We had a chat with him yesterday, obviously one of the front-running guys. If we can just jump in here a second. Obviously, the race has been a bit delayed at the moment, but once it does get underway, some tricky conditions out there. How is your mental state sort of going into this? What are you trying to think ahead to?
I'm trying to win the race. Yeah, not much more than that. I really like the wet, so yeah, I've not driven around here in the wet before, but yeah, we softened it off, bolted some wets on it, and see what it's like. So it was raining a lot heavier a little bit ago, so it dries out very quick, but I'm sure it'll be wet, sort of thing.
And how does this car handle in the wet usually?
Fine. Yeah, no, it's normally, you don't want too much oversteering them in the wet, so we soften the whole car down a little bit just to get a bit of compliance and pick up the grip. The wets are normally pretty good, so we've got some new wets on it, so yeah, we'll see what it's like.
Absolutely. And in these kind of conditions, do you watch the other racing to try and pick out what other drivers are doing to get some ideas for what to do ahead of the race?
Sometimes I haven't this morning. It will be a little bit on kind of a wet line off the dry line, looking for the grip. But I'll have a feel of that on. I think we get 2 green flag laps, so I'll have a feel of that. Then, and it's quite nice to drive off feel. So you look for the grip, feel where the grip is, and go there. So yeah, I think it will be quite a good race. So I think the 3 in front should be pretty strong. But yeah, obviously we'll go for the win is the aim.
Look forward to seeing it then.
Cheers, thanks very much.
Thank you very much. We'll move on a second, see if we can find another driver to have a bit of a chat with. One thing I do love though is, and one thing that is kind of lost on cars these days, is just look at the size. I'm not exactly a big human being, but if I stand next to this, even I look quite massive, and the size of them is just fantastic, which means that they can kind of go 3, 4, 5 wide down the race. If we can we just jump in here a second? Thank you very much. It's very cosy in here. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
How are you looking forward to the race? Are you trying to sort of mentally prepare? Have I ruined your mental prep?
Well, what I'm trying to do is not get wet, for starters, so that it doesn't mist up in here. But the rain seems to be holding off now, so I think it's just going to be a bit slippy and, yeah, give it our best shot.
Where on the grid are you starting?
P2.
So you haven't got too much spray in front of you then?
No, hopefully get a good start. I won't have any spray, you know. that's the aim.
Absolutely. It does mean that you're going to be casualty number 1 going into each corner. You've got to try and figure out where the grip is.
I'm going to be the guinea pig, yeah. So everyone will be like, oh, is it good over there? Is it not? And then it's like, oh, no, definitely not good over there. But yeah, no, we're, yeah, hopefully it'll be a good race and yeah, looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Do you like racing in the wet or do you prefer the dry?
No, I don't mind racing in the rain. It's like more exciting because you never know if it's going to make it round the corner or not. So it's almost like keeps you on your toes.
It definitely does. I don't know if you saw the Civic race but that was absolute chaos.
No, I didn't, unfortunately. But yeah, I can imagine. We've got a little bit of a wait now, so I'm guessing there's a bit of a clear-up operation.
Yeah, there was a couple of cars that decided to spin more than 360 out there, so it should be quite interesting watching you guys as well.
Yes, definitely. We'll be sure to put on a race on, that's for sure.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll close the door now so it doesn't mist up too much in there. There you go. Right, if we move on, we've got a driver over here. Mr. Smith, if I can just jump in here a second. Sorry. Right, so we're talking about the conditions, obviously, because it's been delayed. How do you mentally prepare for a race like this?
I just want to get on with it, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's slippery, it's greasy. It could chuck it down again at any moment. So I particularly want to get on with it at the minute because we've got a helicopter arriving very shortly after the race to take us to the Grand Prix. So how cool's that?
You've got a helicopter ride to the Grand Prix?
Yeah.
Oh, it's all right for some, isn't it? Jesus.
We've only got a very limited slot at Silverstone End, so if we miss the slot, that's it, we're stuffed.
So hang on, right, we're stuck here in rainy Wales and you're going to the Grand Prix?
Yeah, well, you've got to, ain't you? You've got 3 Brits on the front. Got to be there to support them.
It was a pretty good day for Britain yesterday.
Wasn't it? Yeah, pretty damn good. So yeah, I'm not seeing it yet because you can't get any signal in Wales. So,
so in terms of the Grand Prix, what's your prediction? What do you think is going to happen?
I think Norris. I'm hoping Norris. But I wouldn't be surprised if Max gets it all together and stops moaning about his car and just drives it and drives away again like he normally does.
Well, fingers crossed, obviously, with Lewis and George up there as well. Maybe they can hold him up a bit?
Yeah, I think they did 3 cars wide even around the Grand Prix circuit. Nobody'd get by, would they?
You've seen the Top Gear challenge with the Alfa Romeos, and they kept on weaving down the straight.
Yeah, exactly that.
They should do that, definitely, to hold up Max.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Let's get 3 Brits on the podium.
100%, exactly. I couldn't say it better myself. Absolutely. Well, enjoy your helicopter ride, you lucky little, yeah? And if it arrives, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, well, yes, it is starting to dry up a little bit now. We'll carry on over here. Number 29 car. If I could just jump in here, you've got your own umbrella as well, Mr. Harrington. Some people are in the cars trying not to mist it up. You're sat out here. How are you looking forward to the race?
Oh, well, yeah, going to be quite different to yesterday, I think. I'm looking forward to it, seeing what it's like out there.
Have you ever driven this track in the wet before?
I have, but in a different type of car, so it was slippy. So I'm expecting it to be pretty hairy out there.
Where on the grid are you starting?
8th.
I did not realise there were numbers there. I should have looked at that, shouldn't I?
Yeah, they don't get numbers, but you know, we're a bit further back, we do get numbers.
So you'll be right in the spray then. How do you try to pick up your reference points when you're in the spray? Is there?
I'm just going to stare at the back of Colin and hope he gets it right. That's all I'm going to do.
And in terms of the racing line, were you watching the Civics just?
No, I haven't had a look at all. One of my team members told me some good lines around here, so hopefully have a few little secrets, but hopefully that doesn't involve the grass.
I'd ask you to divulge, but I'd imagine you probably won't give me anything.
Not at the moment.
No, I don't blame you, I don't blame you. Good luck for the race.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anyway, yes, it looks like maybe starting to... There's a couple of cars come off track, so I head back up to commentary just after an ad break.
So we've got some tyre wall rebuilding going on here at Anglesey at the moment after that previous race for the Type R Trophy. It was a late incident which resulted in that barrier damage, but the driver and the car been taken away. So let's look back at some of the key moments from the race that we've just seen, the Tagiwa Type R Trophy. This was the start of the race, and this was that when conditions properly, Andy McEwen, were at their best.
They were, weren't they, actually? A little bit greasy, yes, but not too much standing water. It was a reasonably clean run through the first corner, but it all sort of went wrong coming out of the banking, didn't it? There was a bit of a slide there for Delisle going through the second corner. That kind of stacked everybody up, and then I think on the run down towards Church Corner, there was a further stack up, and there, Delisle got tapped into the spin. Don de Graaf then went into a full 360 as well. Others scattered onto the grass in avoidance, and that was the first of a couple of incidents in that race that could have ended a lot worse.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think we probably dodged a bullet a little bit there. This was 374. Kai Lindsay at 95, also involved in this. Was Ben Seibold, who went well in the early stages of the race, but Adam Park here was doing really well to hold off other drivers for the lead. New engine in his car for this weekend after lost it previously at Carroll Park. This was a big moment in the race because Kai Lindsay lost it and he nearly took Joe Jessup out of the equation completely. Just a little tap in the end into the side of Joe's car. He was fortunately able to continue. Ross Borman, who was in retirement yesterday, he had a particularly wild moment coming out of the corkscrew midway through the race.
Speaking of wild moments, Matt Wilkins, as he was charging after the race leader, got into the side of Ben Seibold heading up the hill, sent Ben into a spectacular spin. Wilkins was through into third and then set about chasing after Adam Parker, who got it all wrong under pressure into the banking, slid up the hill and opened the door for Wilkins, and that then allowed Wilkins to start chasing after the race leader, whilst behind there were more shenanigans for Tom McFarlane.
Yeah, he was well involved in those yesterday as well. That was 92 Adam Parker, who said he was sideways at nearly every corner in his interview with Kieran afterwards. Well, there was an example of that. Joe Jessup, though, he did have the lead, and Wilkins was making a few mistakes in his pursuit of the race leader.
Yeah, he'd caught up nearly at one point, hadn't he? Then made a couple of mistakes. McFarlane, this was by far his biggest moment of the weekend, spinning dramatically across the front of another car. Miraculously, contact was avoided and no major damage done. There was quite a bit of touchy-feely stuff going on, though, through the midfield as drivers were really struggling to run side by side in these conditions.
Yeah, and this was Don de Graaf after the early spin, getting back ahead of Richard Lindsay and up into fourth position. And here were the leaders coming over the line. It was down to less than a quarter of a second over the line after a mistake from the leader, Joe Jessup, up at Rocket Corner. So a lively second race of the weekend for the Tagiwa Type R Trophy. They're back out again at around about 3:35 this afternoon, although those timings might be subject to change given the delays that we have now had this morning, a delay of 20 minutes or so while the tyre wall is continuing to be rebuilt here after that incident in the previous race when Luke Emmons went off into the barrier, having sort of snapped to the right-hand side rather than to the left as he went through the first element of the corkscrew. It looks like marshals are making their way back to their posts, though, which possibly suggests, and yes, the rescue vehicle there also making its way away from the scene, which suggests we're possibly not too far away from getting racing back underway here at Anglesey Circuit. We have been looking at the weather forecast, and it looking like we might get about an hour more rain here this morning. We'll keep an eye on that, though. We'll have another short break, though, before we come back for the next race for the Mini Melias. So the cars now lining up on the grid for the second of the races this weekend for the Dunlop Mini Amelia Challenge, incorporating the Libra class. The cars lining up. They're going to get a couple of green flag laps given the change in conditions since yesterday, and then it's going to be a 20-minute race for these cars. They put on a fantastic show yesterday. It was Andrew Jordan who took the win, his third in a row, having taken 2 at Thruxton last time out. Kane Astin was second yesterday, and Jeff Smith, who we're hearing from with Kieran, completing the top 3. The grid for this race set by the fastest times in the race yesterday, fastest lap times in the race yesterday. So it's Jeff Smith that lines up on pole position in the number 46 car, and besides him is number 1 Aaron Smith. Second row of the grid, it's number 11 Kane Astin, and 77 being Andrew Jordan. Then on the third row of the grid, it's number 53, which is Jodie Lees, and 23 Rupert Deeth alongside. On the fourth row of the grid, it's Colin Peacock in number 8, and 29 is Damien Harrington. Row 5 of the grid is number 37, which is James Cuthbertson, and 89 Sean King. Joe Polly, number 76, lines up on the inside of row 6 beside number 84, which is Ryan Taylor. On to row 7. That's where we have the 20 car of Mark Sims and 69 Tony LeMay. Philip Brown, number 5, and Peter Hills, 126, line up on the 8th row. The 9th row is 123 Hugh Turner, and 474, which is Josh Evans. And then row 10, 133 Les Stanton, and 595 Julian Proctor, 113 Phil Harvey, and 969 Steve Trench round out what will be a 22 car field. There is some drama though, I think, for Joe Polly, is that her car being pushed backwards off the grid by the marshals, so drama there for Joe, who was due to line up on, the 6th row of the grid. It looks like she's not going to be able to take the start of this race, so we are going to have a bit of a gap there. It's worth also noting that there is a gap of a couple of rows between the Mini Amelia Challenge cars and the Mini Libra cars as well. So green flag now waved at the back. We're going to have the countdown procedure and then the green flag laps, given the changing conditions. I mean, it has improved considerably since that Type R Trophy race that we saw previously, but we are expecting a bit more rain to head our way. So we'll see how conditions develop during the course of this, Andy. It's going to be intriguing, isn't it?
It is, certainly. The general rule here is that if you can see the mountains in the distance, then it's probably not going to rain. If you can't, then take shelter, because there's rain on the way, and I can't really see the mountains at the moment. So I do think there is some more rain heading this way. Hopefully, once that passes over, we'll have a clearer afternoon. And as we've seen, and as you've sort of alluded to there, the track drains exceptionally quickly. I'm so impressed with that. I looked away from the track for no more than 4 or 5 minutes after the completion of that Type R Trophy race. And when I look back again, virtually no standing water on the pit straight. A pit straight that was completely waterlogged when the checkered flag flew in that previous race. So once the rain passes, the track should then start to dry out nicely. But for now, definitely still slippery out there. And these Mini Amelias, very stiffly sprung, short wheelbase cars. They can be quite lively in slippery conditions. So the early laps in particular, I think drivers will have to drive maybe a little bit away from the limit that we're used to seeing them running to.
Now, ordinarily, they'd be on slick tyres, the Mini Amelias, as well, but they won't be, I wouldn't think, in these conditions. They'll have some dry weather tyres on, but they are really quick cars in the dry. They can corner so well. Launched back in 1970, Mini Amelia, and they put out in excess of 130 brake horsepower. They're joined these days by the Mini Libra cars, which is something you can do, a similar level of performance, but on a more limited budget. So it's for A-series engine cars, largely similar specifications, but there's various choices of cylinder head for your A-series engine, and the emphasis really on value for money within that class. And it's good to see a good number of those cars on the grid. Peter Hills taking the win yesterday. Hugh Turner taking second from Josh Evans right at the end of yesterday's race in the Libra class. So overall, it was Andrew Jordan that clung on to the win by just 0.2 of a second from Kane Astin, and Jeff Smith was third. The three of them all separated by less than 1 second. Aaron Smith right with them as well, so it was a real close run between those four for victory. Ian Curley a distance back in 5th, and Rupert Death in 6th position. Although he only finished 3rd yesterday, Jeff Smith will have extended his lead in the championship. It was just 6 points over Ian Curley, but he finished a couple of places ahead of him yesterday. And Aaron Smith 3rd in the championship coming into this weekend. Jeff Smith, not too bad a weekend for him so far in the championship. Andrew Jordan not doing the full championship. He appeared at Thruxton. It's good to have him here with us at Anglesey as well this weekend. Smith, Jordan, Aaron Smith and Kane Astin and Endaf Owens have been winners this year in Mini-Me. We've not seen too much of Endaf Owens since the opening meeting of the season at Donington Park, though, where he took the win in the opening round of the championship. But there's lots of experience, lots of past champions on this grid as well. Aaron Smith, the reigning champion in 2023. He won it 3 times previous to that. Andrew Jordan won it in 2021. Rupert Death won it a couple of years ago. Kane Astin was a champion in 2015 as well. Jeff Smith, a 3-time Mini-7 champion. So lots of experience on this grid, Andy. So they should, you would think, be able to adapt well to these difficult and changing conditions.
I think it's fair to say they've probably had a few wet races, haven't they, over the years? So yes, those more experienced drivers should be pretty much at home in the conditions. They'll be using these 2 green flag laps to fully assess the track conditions, figure out where the grip is or isn't, and then applying that into the 20-minute race that's about to get underway. And a race that hopefully will include Jo Polly, after all, because the team have been working away on her car, and it's now parked at the end of pit lane, looking as though it will join the race after everybody else has gone through. So she'll be at the back, but at least we'll get a race, hopefully, as long as they have got to the bottom of the issues with that car.
So the cars are lining up on the grid once again for a 20-minute race for the Dunlop Mini Melia Challenge with the Mini Libras as well. And yesterday in 20 minutes we've got 16 laps. Probably won't get quite that many today. Obviously the lap times will be that much slower in these, well, I'll say damp at the moment rather than full wet conditions. Last cars just going into position. Green flag waves now at the back, so we're ready for the off. Revs start to rise, the red lights go on, and out they go. And let's see who makes the best of the starts. Is it Jeff Smith or is it going to be Aaron Smith? Aaron on the outside for turn number 1, but he's able to sweep through, I think, to take the lead away from Jeff into target for the first time. So it's Aaron Smith grabbing the lead at the start. Jeff Smith in 2nd place, who is going to be in 3rd position. It is all at a big moment there for Kane Astin, I think that is, in 4th place. Andrew Jordan just getting past him and up into P4 as a result of that. It's the number 23 car of Rupert Death, the 2022 champion, that's there in 3rd position at the moment. Then Andrew Jordan and Kane Astin gap back then to number 8, Colin Peacock, who runs in 6th position. But the 2 leaders can tell you are going side by side as they go up the hill. Here they are, and it's Jeff Smith on the outside of Aaron Smith up into Rocket. And also Rupert Death making up some ground. Can he go around the outside of both of them? He's certainly got past Aaron Smith. He can't quite make it past Jeff Smith. He might have gone too deep into the corner. Aaron Smith might get back through. He does, around the outside of the 2nd part of the Rocket. And now Aaron trying to go around the outside of Jeff as well. It's all happening on this first lap of the Mini Media Challenge.
Yeah, brilliant racing between the leading trio. Andy Jordan is back into 4th place now as well. So it was Kane Astin who lost out, really. And Kane got by far the best of the starts, but went to the inside line. And as we've seen time and again, particularly in the wet, that's not really the place to be at turn 1. He lost momentum, lost a few places, and he is only 5th then as they drop down the hill at the end of the opening lap. Colin Peacock looks like he's there in 6th position. And then in 7th place, James Cuthbertson, who started 10th, so he's gained a few spots from where he started. But Jeff Smith leads at the end of the opening lap, with Aaron Smith tucked right up behind him, then Death, then Jordan, and then Kane Astin, side by side for the lead as they head into the banking, nearly side by side anyway, as Aaron Smith looks for the wide line in to take the tight line out and carry the speed towards Church Corner. Now, yesterday, and in the dry, we saw actually quite limited overtaking, really, by Mini Melia standards. Oh, well, it's a big slide for Rupert Death. He's off the road completely, manages to keep it pointing in the right direction. He will lose a load of places, but that could have been an awful lot worse. In the wet, I was about to say, though, Ian, it looks as though there is at least the prospect, isn't there, of a bit more side-by-side racing.
Absolutely right. Up to Rocket they go, and it's Aaron Smith around the outside of Jeff Smith. Can't quite make that work, trying to get the cut back now, go around the outside of the 2nd part of the Rocket sequence, but that doesn't work either. And the 2 unrelated Smiths are nose to tail at the front of the field. Rupert Death was in 3rd position. He's dropped back. So that should be Andrew Jordan, yes it is now, that's up into 3rd place. Kane Astin 4th. and Colin Peacock up into 5th position as a result of all of that. So wet weather not proving to be a barrier to some good battling here, although as that rain I can start to see falling again. So we'll keep an eye on the conditions evolving over the next 17 minutes or so.
I think you're right, though. Definitely some raindrops falling up at the corkscrew. Headlights ablaze for the leading two, though, as they head through target corner at the beginning of lap number 3. And Jeff Smith with a narrow advantage over Aaron Smith in 2nd position. Rupert Deeth's moment in 3rd, of course, has promoted Andrew Jordan onto the podium places now, albeit some way behind the leading two, having had to hit the brakes. Now, I was about to say that the Libra class was being led by Peter Hills, but Peter Hills then had a big slide heading up towards Rocket Corner on the previous lap. He had a spin, and he has lost the lead now, so Julian Proctor moves into the lead of the Mini Libra class with Hugh Turner and Josh Evans behind. But keep an eye on that turquoise and white number 126 car of Peter Hills. He should have the pace to climb back up the order.
Here's the battle between James Cuthbertson and the recovering Rupert Deeth. Up the inside he goes into Rocket for 6th position. So the champion from 2 years ago claims the place back. And his next target then is going to be Colin Peacock, number 8, who is another experienced driver, long-time competitor in the Mini Media Championship. Rupert Deeth there turning his way through Peel, and already he's almost on the back of the Colin Peacock car. There's James Cuthbertson in number 37, having just been vanquished. Leads are still close together, the two Smiths. They were separated by 0.4 of a second at the start of the lap. It might even be a little bit less than that now as they come up and over the line this time. 0.385 seconds becomes 0.226 seconds, and that's because Aaron Smith in 2nd place has done the best lap of the race now. So it's narrowed the gap a little bit to the XBTCC racer. Up towards the banking they go for the 4th time in this race. Slightly different lines being taken by the two of them. Andrew Jordan letting the back of the car step out a little bit in 3rd place. He's not really in touch with the leaders. Rupert Deeth actually just come through and done the best lap of the race now, a 1:21.704. So he's got the bit between his teeth as Deeth, and he will be trying to get the place away from, in fact he's already got the place away from Colin Peacock. So his next target is Kane Aston, 2 seconds up the road.
Yeah, so he's in some clean air now, maybe able to go even faster as a result. The leaders head towards Rocket for the 4th time. And Jeff Smith now seems to have an answer, doesn't he, for Aaron Smith. He's defending that lead pretty successfully every lap up at the top of the hill, and manages to keep Aaron Smith at bay. Andrew Jordan definitely closing in on this lap, though. He was within slipstreaming range up the hill. He's pulled away from Kane Aston, who for whatever reason in this race just doesn't seem to have the pace, does he? Kane Aston finished 2nd yesterday and ran Andrew Jordan very close to the flag. The same not true, though, so far in race 2.
Here's the battle for 2nd place within the Mini Libra class. It's the red and green car. Nice livery that on Hugh Turner's car. Josh Evans, who's done much of the winning in the Libra class this year, just behind him in that sort of lime green number 474 car. There's the 126 car as well of Peter Hills, the man who won yesterday that Andy was mentioning, sort of pale blue car. Rupert Deeth did another best lap of the race, a 1:21.358, another 10th or so faster he has gone, and he is now less than a second behind Kane Aston, who's, as Andy says, not quite in top form in this race. Meanwhile, this battle for 2nd amongst the Libras continues. Evans, as yet, unable to do anything about Hugh Turner. Just having a look at the lap time for Peter Hills that time, and he's actually lapping slower than the two in front of him, so possibly his setup not quite right for these conditions.
Interestingly, though, Rupert Deeth half a second quicker than leader Jeff Smith, which does rather suggest he might yet have the pace to catch this leading trio if he can get past Kane Aston. The leaders then head through Rocket once again. Still 46 from 1 from 77. Jeff Smith leading Aaron Smith, leading Andrew Jordan back in the Libras. Evans continuing to challenge Hugh Turner now as they head up the hill. They are side by side as they head through the kinks on the school straight. And the green car has the momentum and will sail through into 2nd position in class. Now we'll have to try and chase down Proctor out in front. There is Hills in 4th. And he just doesn't look very comfortable in these conditions. He's gone off again, has he? Yes, goes straight on this time up at Rocket and nearly allows Tony LeMay back through. LeMay, though, is not running in the Mini Libra class, so that's not a battle for class position.
Now, in the background of that, we briefly saw that Rupert Deeth was right with Kane Aston, so we'll see if we can pick up the battle for 4th position. That's just about to head up to the banking now. The top 3 are right together, Jeff Smith, Aaron Smith and Andrew Jordan, but Kane Aston under pressure here from Rupert Deeth, who's taking the tighter line, not necessarily the line you might expect in these conditions, and Aston for the moment holding on, but Rupert Deeth's going to have another go, I think, into Church Corner. He's not quite there on the inside line for the right-hander, and so for the moment